Hi, welcome to PhDizzle. I'm your host, Alice Chang, and today I'll be interviewing Dr. Ilya Captain, who got his bachelor's in biochemistry and molecular biology from UC Davis and his PhD in chemistry from UCLA, and is currently an account executive with Elusive. I want to start at the beginning. So when you were doing your bachelor's degree, you decided to study biochemistry. Tell me a little bit about that and then how you decided to even pursue a PhD, because then you transitioned into chemistry. So I don't know if you did anything else in biology.
That's a good question. So when I was in high school and in college, my parents really wanted me to be a doctor, like an MD doctor.
Yeah.
And biochemistry made sense as a major, as med school prep. And there's a number of things that you have to do when you're preparing to go to med school, and one of them is research. So I did organic chemistry research at a lab at UC Davis, and I really loved it. It was a really cool experience. I got to make molecules that have never existed in the universe. It was very magical and alluring to me. So I decided to scrap the med school plan and pursue a PhD in chemistry instead, and just do more of that because it's what I enjoyed.
Okay. And so did you actually do anything else on the biology side, or you just went straight into chemistry for your PhD?
I took a year off between my undergrad and grad school, and I worked at a electron microscopy lab that did imaging of proteins.
Oh, cool.
So I had quite a lot of background in biology and exposure to biology. So it was cool. I was a lot more of a biologically leaning chemist than a lot of my classmates in my cohort.
I see. So what did you actually do? What was your dissertation on?
It was on phosphorus-containing polypeptides. So we were making materials that kind of looked like proteins, but maybe simplified versions of proteins.
Mm-hmm. And what are they for?
We were making materials for drug delivery. So you'd make these strands that would have secondary structure, and they would self-assemble into nanoparticles. This was before nanoparticles were cool. I don't know if you know that they're cool, but the vaccines
cool.
are based on
Everything
nanoparticles.
nano is cool now.
But now it has an actual application in biotech and therapeutics. So the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine are both nanoparticle vaccines.
Oh, that's cool. But not using your technology, different technology, right?
Different technology, yes.
Okay. So, all right. So you did your PhD in chemistry in drug delivery, which is biological. But then after school, you didn't stay in academia. What did you end up deciding? Actually, you did a postdoc, right? So tell me a little bit about your journey, kind of transitioning from academia and how you thought about that.
I was confused. Toward the end of my time in grad school, I wasn't too jazzed about continuing to do research, but I wasn't sure if it was just the grad school environment. I'm sure a lot of people who have gone to grad school knows there's a lot of ups and downs in that time there. So I wanted to give it one last shot, do a postdoc, and see if maybe a different environment would make me feel better about it. It was a really cool postdoc. But I still felt the same about research. It's interesting, but it's not something I see myself doing for a long time.
Yeah.
Or for my entire career anyway.
Yeah. But what were the things that you didn't like about it that you wanted to find in your next job outside of academia?
That's a good question. I've reflected on this quite a lot, and I have maybe a generalist leaning personality. I'm not very good at diving a mile deep into a question. So I'm more of I want to learn a little bit about a lot of different things. I considered consulting for a while before I went into sales. So that's another area that I think I would have enjoyed had I not gone into sales. So it wasn't I wanted to do sales, but it was just something that I sort of fell into.
Mm-hmm. So tell me what sales because the only thing, I think of telemarketing, which is not what you do. Generally, what is sales? What should someone with a technical degree think about when they think about a salesperson?
It's a lot of different things. It's a broad discipline. I started out as a like a technical expert that would support the salespeople in their conversations. So we were selling a technology that would manufacture nanoparticles.
Okay,
So
makes sense.
I had expertise in that area, and I was pretty good at doing presentations and talking to people and being social. So it was a good combination of skills that allowed me to get my feet wet in sales. I wasn't 100% sure that I wanted to do it, so it was a nice role to get my feet wet and see if I wanted to continue down that path.
Yeah.
And there would still be an out if I didn't. But I loved it. I really enjoyed it, so I kept going down that route. So what is sales? It's highly consultative when you're selling. I work in a B2B environment, so that means business to business. My company works with other companies, and the deal sizes tend to be quite large. So we don't have like a box or a thing that we sell. It's usually a customized solution. So there's a lot of discovery that needs to happen in order to figure out what should the solution be, what are the benefits of having this solution. So it's kind of like, it is a lot like consulting. They call it consultative sales.
You kind of had the skill set from a technical perspective, but how did you transition into that role in terms of like, did you have to learn any other skills? Did you feel like you were prepared just coming out of school? And how did you like convince them that you were also a good fit?
I was fortunate enough to join a company that had a relatively mature sales team with like pretty good sales leadership. So they had a training program in place for people going into sales. They had a lot of resources already there. There was a well mapped out sales process. So a lot of the pieces were there, and it was just a matter of putting them together. So this was a late stage startup, Precision Nanosystems, where I started my career. And they already had a lot of the infrastructure in place that was necessary to succeed. So, and they had a relatively large team of experienced salespeople, so I could observe them and figure out what this thing is and how to do it.
Yeah. All right. So that sounded like it was a good training for you to, also a good environment for you to figure out if you liked it, also good training for you to build up that skill set. And you were saying that you started more on like the technical side. And so since then, you've actually had a couple of different roles at different companies. So tell me how that's evolved for you, and basically how, like, what are you doing today, and how is that role today different than what you were doing when you first started?
So when I was doing technical support for sales, I was not responsible for like hitting a number. So people in a full-on sales role generally carry a quota, and that's what I have. I have a quota, and then I have a base salary. So it's a higher pressure role, more expectations. They tend to be compensated a lot more as well than supporting roles, because I guess it's high stress, high risk, high reward. We can look at it that way. But it's also a lot of fun. There's a lot of discovery that happens. We talk to customers. We get a lot of face time with people who use our technology. It's product management, it's marketing, it's business strategy, it's pricing, and it's a lot of that because I work at an early stage startup. So many of the pieces that the previous company I mentioned are not really in place. So we're building the plane as we're flying it, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, so tell me about Elucidata. What do you guys do? What's your product offering?
Yeah, so we are experts in biomedical data. There's a ton of data out there that people produce and submit into the public domain. So researchers who collect data like genomics and transcriptomics and other omics data, and then they release it into the public domain. They submit it to repositories, they put it on, they like attach it to their publications. And it's really valuable, but it's really difficult to use because it's not standardized, and it doesn't adhere to a single naming convention. We call these things ontologies. So it's really hard to find. So if you are, say, working on, I don't know, a specific cancer pathway, and you want to learn more about this cancer pathway, what would you do? You would probably go to Google and type it in, but then your results might be questionable. Google is not really designed for that. But that's really state of the art right now. And what we do is we ingest all of this data at scale, we standardize it, we label it in a consistent way, and we make it much easier to find. And then there's a host of tools and solutions around this idea. So there's a lot of derivatives of data that can be used to build tools, to validate therapeutic targets, to discover therapeutic targets. It's a really exciting field to be in. We've been around for about 6 years. So
okay.
Not young, not super young.
Young, but not like IBM, like forever, right? But
yeah.
I guess my point was, it's kind of nice to work with these younger companies because as a salesperson, you know, we were talking about telemarketing earlier. It's like the difference between like pounding on someone's door and be like, do you want to buy this? Do you want to buy this? Versus like, I actually have a product that is super innovative that you'll want to talk to me about because it solves a big problem, because the state of the art today is just Googling stuff and you can't solve your problem with just Googling. And I have a solution for you that's really differentiated. So I feel like, you know, it must be really cool being on the sales side for such a cool product where you don't actually have to like, I'm sure you have to bang on doors too, but like what you're well received when you do that.
Well, there's a lot of unglamorous stuff that goes on in sales too. You know, you get ignored a lot. You have to get meetings at the end of the day, but that's just a part of the job. Every role has like things that maybe are not the most enjoyable.
Yeah.
We call it prospecting, and it is a really tough part of being a salesperson, is getting those conversations. Once you get the conversations, it's a lot of fun.
One of the things that you're saying, you carry a quota, which means that you are responsible for like going out and hunting for prospective clients, right? So is that like just cold calls, cold emails? How do you get in front of people?
We lean on email. We use LinkedIn marketing campaigns. That's been the biggest source of leads. We also use our networks.
Okay.
Customer referrals. So it's just whatever you can get and whatever you choose to specialize in. There's no single way to success here. It's very like self-driven. One thing I've been doing that I've really enjoyed is sending video.
Oh.
So there are tools that make it really easy to like produce your own video. Okay. So if I wanted to get a conversation with you, Alice, I might send you a personalized video. And if you watch it, perhaps you'll think it's interesting enough to have a conversation.
That's cool. So it's like you record yourself talking to me about the product like that?
Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
It's kind of like a cold call, except I feel like it's less intrusive.
Your background in school was chemistry and then these, you know, nanoparticle delivery systems, and then that's what you did in your first job, but now you're working on data. So it's also difficult or different from a technical perspective. So how was that for you? Was that an easy transition? Like, did you have to was it difficult to ramp up?
I did some freelance data analysis when I was a postdoc and before I worked with a nanoparticle company. So I had some exposure to data analysis tools and just working with data and the challenges of working with data. I even used Python to like an intermediate level. So it was actually a pretty easy transition. I don't have to be an expert. We have experts that I can call on, but even knowing who to call on is already very useful.
Mm-hmm. So are you like not that technical? Are you more like, what are your conversations like? Are they just like product oriented? Are they just like problem solving to see what they actually need and then you connect them with a technical person?
That's a good question. They're all so different. The way I think about sales is every individual problem that I work on is relatively simple, but the breadth and the number of these problems there's just a lot of them. Mm. So I feel like I face more complexity on the daily basis now than I did when I was in the lab working on hard science.
Oh, interesting.
But it's a very different kind of complexity. I deal with product questions. I deal with trying to translate what a prospect is saying into how our product might help them. I deal with legal contracts. I deal with, maybe we don't quite have the offering, but we can help this client, so we need to invent one. So we do that.
I mean, it seems like you really enjoy it, but this is very different than what your parents wanted you to do as a career. So how do they think about what you're doing now?
They're fine with it. I mean, they're like, so I come from an immigrant family. I was 12 years old when I moved here, and I feel like in immigrant families, it's like you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, or you're an engineer. Those are like well understood. So parents want you to do that. But like, I mean, nobody knows what an account executive is. I mean, some people do, but most people don't. So it's very rare that somebody says, "Oh, well, you should be an enterprise salesperson," because it's just not something that
Yeah.
that people have an understanding of. And it's not a linear path. Like, you don't go to school for this. You kind of pick up the skills, or you realize that you enjoy it. It's so there's not a defined path to get into this line of work.
Do you think you would have skipped the PhD had you found out about this sort of role beforehand, or are you glad that you did it? Did it help you maybe transition into this career?
Having a PhD opened some doors for me, for sure. But looking back at it carried a really large opportunity cost. Had I been working and developing my career in the 6 years that it took me to do the PhD, I think I would have been more advanced in my career. But on the flip side, I made a lot of friends for life, built a lot of really awesome relationships. So I think the benefits of it were definitely not financial, but there were a lot of benefits to doing a PhD.
Yeah. And maybe you could argue in terms of being in a more like technical company as well, like you were able to, because you kind of started off in a very technical role, and even today it's still a technical company, even though you're not in a technical role anymore.
Yeah, for sure. So we have two other colleagues in my role, and they do not have PhDs, and it's not an impediment to them doing their job. We do have different views and like different approaches, but yeah, it's not a must.
Yeah.
If I could do it over again, I would have done a master's.
That's good advice.
Yeah, and UCLA would probably not want me to say this, but at UCLA in chemistry, you could get a master's for free in 9 months if they haven't changed the way they do things.
Oh, wow. You mean if you just dropped out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is like most schools, although 9 months is short. 9 months is shorter than I thought, but that's pretty
cool. If you like do everything exactly right, it is possible. I think that like everyone should have a job in some kind of a sales capacity at least once in their life. It really changes the way you look at things. A lot of doors that feel closed are not actually closed. There's usually a way to get in there.
That's interesting. I love that. So applying that to your life and I guess opening doors into your personal side of things, what do you like to do for fun?
I like to do physical things. So lately I've been into kayaking. Before it started to get dark early outside, I would go kayaking like 2 to 3 times a week after work.
Is there water near you?
I'm in the Bay Area, so there's a lot of water.
Okay. But it's cold.
Yeah, but you just don't fall in.
Okay. That makes sense. All right.
Yeah, so I like to go hiking with my friends. Lately, I've been getting into climbing, like at climbing gyms.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love board games. I've got my Catan stack back there.
Nice. I see. Let's just talk about the things on your shelf. So okay. We've got the board games. Okay. I see a camera. Is that for?
So this is completely. This whole thing is for Zoom, almost exclusively.
Okay, so what things
I like
are
to have
real?
a nice background behind me when I take meetings.
Oh, I see. Okay, so what things are things you actually like to do versus that are fake?
Well, so the board games are probably the only things that I actually use on this shelf.
Okay.
I do play bass on occasion, but I have another one in my living room, so I just play that one when I want to. This one is just for display pretty much.
Okay. What about what else is on there? What's on the bottom?
Oh, that's a little photography light. And again, this was not for photography, but it was for Zoom. I was trying to figure out a good lighting situation for when I'm in meetings.
I see. Did you buy like a special camera?
I did figure it out, but it's like a shop light that's pointed against
Oh,
this
that's nice.
board, which
Yeah.
gives you like a nice soft light without casting shadows.
They have you didn't buy like a ring light. They have like the ring lights that like people use, like the influencers use.
Yeah, so those are good, and they provide very good lighting, but they kind of destroy your eyeballs if you have them shining at you for more than a couple of minutes at a time.
So you can't have them on like all day.
Yeah, so when I'm in a meeting for an hour, I do not want that like in my eyes, and that's why I didn't use that light.
I see. And then what's on the bottom is like a plate, like the round thing.
Oh, that's just like a little piece of art I found at a thrift store. I didn't know where else to put it.
Okay. Well, what about the on your right, my left, your right? It's an upside down map.
Mm-hmm.
What's that? What's the story?
I got it because I thought it was cool. It was not. I didn't intend for it to be upside down, but then it was just kind of a fun thing to do. And
what do you mean? Like, did you put it up wrong?
No, I put it upside down on purpose. And then when I started at my company, people were noticing and they were asking me questions about it. You know, it's a different perspective, right? Who's to say that it should be that way or this way?
Yeah, I actually didn't realize. I thought it was just like some abstract art. And then I like looked at it and I was like, oh, that looks like a map. So I didn't, unless I was like focusing on it, I wouldn't have even noticed. It's interesting.
One thing I've been curious about is kite surfing.
What? So what is that? Is that when you fly in the air?
It's like where you're holding a kite with a bar and it's attached to you, and then you're on this board and then you generate power with this kite on the water. But I think this is going to be a longer term goal for me.
Okay, it's on the water. Mm-hmm. What's the one you're like in the air? It's like I don't know what you call it, but like you're I think you're like strapped to something above you and you're like flying like this.
Oh, maybe hang gliding?
Yeah, maybe that's the one. Would you do that?
I mean, I would maybe do it for fun once, but I don't think I would get into it as a hobby.
Okay.
Okay. It's really nice to take advantage of the water here in the bay. So water sports are so accessible.
Yeah.
I used to go snowboarding. I lived in Sacramento before going to UCLA and coming to the bay, and snowboarding is really easy to do from there. It's just a day trip.
How far are you? Yeah, I was going to say Tahoe is also, if you wanted to do like snow stuff, that's not too far, is it?
It's 3 to 4 hours to drive there.
Okay.
So it's like if you can do it as a day trip, but it's just awful and takes a long time.
Yeah. I didn't think like Sacramento was like a big snow city.
You can get up to the snow in like an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on traffic and road conditions.
Oh, wow.
So
I had no idea.
It's much more accessible from there. Yeah, there's a lot that can be done. I'm still learning about new roles all the time. So if any listeners or anybody watching wants to learn more about what can be done on the sales and marketing side with a PhD, drop me a line.
PhDizzle.
Having fun with smart people who do cool things.